Welcome to the Hmong Peeps Show, the one and only show that brings you ordinary people sharing extraordinary insights. Well, maybe. Here is your host, Chew Effin Lee.
Hey, welcome to the Hmong Peeps Show. This is part 2 from episode 13 with Ba. And in that episode, we had her share her experiences from the past, how she embraced her spiritual journey, shamanic journey. So part 2 here is going to be more focused about the present and how her experiences are impacting her today and how she's dealing with her everyday experiences, whether it's paranormal or just spirituality. So, Ba, do you want to say hi to people?
Hello.
Okay. So, yeah, go ahead and talk about what everyday, your everyday life, how your shamanic journey is impacting your everyday life and the struggles, the pros and cons, pretty much.
Okay. Well, I'm a normal, just like everybody else. There's nothing special. My experience as of when I started initiating my journey, some aspect has become a little bit easier, and then there are other aspects that are has gotten a lot more complicated. Some of the things that has gotten a lot easier since I've initiated as a shaman is that now I can live with the fact that I know I'm not crazy. I can be truly who I am to myself and validate the experience that I have, knowing that what my experience is does not classify or does not label me as a crazy person, and that it's okay. The difficulty part that comes with being initiated is that there's certain expectation and there's certain responsibility that now as a shamanic practitioner I need to be fully aware of, and I always need to be very mindful about. So there are certain things that comes and certain responsibility that entails my current path right now. For those who are new to their journey or are new to this this new wave of spirituality growth, I think that that's part of that struggle, is that people don't know what they need to know, and there's not a widely known source out there listing these are the things that you should do, these are the things that you shouldn't do. And a lot of time there are people who don't know, and they ended up in the westernized system where they're being classified, being prodded, and being medicated because of this issue. And I think that I'm not suggesting people not to go to the doctor. Go to a doctor, get the help you needed if that's what you need. But I'm also saying that there are things that as coming from a cultural perspective maybe also consider, but those items does entail responsibility and I guess cognitive understanding of your actions and how you are going to impact other people by embracing this. So
yeah, I want to talk about when you mentioned seeing doctors. So I used to work with a lot of mentally ill clients, and you've probably heard me share this story, so I'll share it with you folks out there. So I worked at this intensive residential treatment center for the mentally ill, and I had this client. He was Hmong. He was probably in his early 20s. So they, for the folks there, the staff, they made sense that since I'm Hmong and he's Hmong, he can be my client or whatever. And when I saw him, the first thing I noticed was a lot of red, cloth around his wrist. His neck had like 4 or 5 of them. Mm-hmm. his ankles had like 3 or 4 on each side.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, just being culturally aware, I knew that this guy is probably dealing with a lot of demons or spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at his chart, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So I had a talk with him, just getting some medical background on him, and he did mention to me that he sees ghosts on a nightly basis. Even at the treatment center, it was a house, and so he told me that they've medicated him with all these medication. So I asked him, does the medications work? And he goes, no, man, they still come and see me every night. And I had a talk with the director of that facility, just asking them, have they taken into consideration the cultural piece? Have they consulted with his family members and see how traditionally or culturally they would handle these situations? And that never took place. So I do see that there is kind of a what's the word? A disadvantage for Hmong folks when you're talking about mental health, because I think a lot of these medical or mental health providers, they don't do enough to expand awareness or just being conscious of how does this family, how do they usually take care of these issues. So they don't be too quick on just medicating people right away. And so, yeah, I agree with you. There are certain situations and experiences where it might be more than a spiritual problem.
Yeah.
How I determine whether someone is mentally ill or someone's actually seeing ghosts is I ask some of these questions where I'll say, what kind of ghosts are you seeing? Because if they're talking about their relatives, their grandparents, great grandparents, uncles, or somebody that they remember that passed, then I'm not too quick to say you're schizophrenic. One of the most important piece that I want to discover when I'm talking to these people is, if you're hearing these voices and you're seeing these spirits or ghosts, are they telling you to harm yourself or harming others? And if the answer is yes, they're telling me to go kill myself, or they're telling me to go and kill or beat up somebody. To me, that would be more of a mental illness. And the only way to really, there's not the only way, but I would really be in favor of considering medications at that point. But if they're just seeing, relatives that's passed on, and they're not being harmed by the voices or visions, then I don't see any reasons why we should medicate that person. So those of you out there who are very quick to go see a psychiatrist, and you guys are still like practicing shaman, the shaman tradition, consult with whoever is the shaman in your family first. See if that's helpful before you go and seek Western medication.
And I think that I would want to interject that the severity too. If there's a severe case and the family knows that, okay, if we don't help this person, they're going to harm themselves, seek medical help. Call 911 if you have to, because that's a clear sign that it's way above and beyond what a cultural ritual is going to be able to do at that point in time. However, there are the piece that, once that person is well, if they are on their spiritual journey, if they are inflicted because they have spiritual guides, then, it's not too late to address that. The only thing to be mindful of is that just because you acknowledge that person has a spiritual guides, or that they can talk with their angels or whatnot, that you forego all of the potential medical issue that could be associated with that individual. So shamanism or spirituality is not one answer solution for everything. So there are those who do need mental health and they are mentally incapable, so maybe they do need to seek Western medicine with their mental issues. However, I think that there are those who may seem very very in line with having mental issues, but yet there are defining items that could associate them with maybe this is more than just or only a mental issue, but that it may have something to do with their spirituality. And for that piece, they can definitely work with their families, find, have their family be their support group, and maybe pursue, in addition to Western medicine, the help of getting them stabilized on the spiritual side. A few years ago, I was asked to participate in a workshop with that discusses the issue of shamanism for case manager for Ramsey County. And I did a quick 15-minute presentation just basically introducing myself and on the subject of spirituality and mental health issues. And a lot of the people, a lot of the case manager who are there are they're so they see somebody who are said to have these kind of experience and automatically label them as mentally incapable or mentally having as either schizophrenia, multiple personality type, and they give you these certain labels. Where when I had that presentation, I was later at the end of that presentation was pulled aside, and there was a few case manager that came up and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that I cannot imagine that Zhongya Gogo would be classified as Wenning or Gutsuning or be talking about the spiritual piece, because by communicating with you, you look like a normal person. I would never in a million years classify you as somebody who is mentally incapable." And like I said, sometimes Beidou Western medicine is still trying to catch up to our cultural piece. But having us coming from a minority group who is very immersed in this type of practice, that it's mindful for us to also be aware of the help that's associated with these mental health institutions. At the same time, also don't neglect the fact that we do have our cultural piece, that we can initiate that piece. And if that piece fails, we can have the Western medicine to go to. But not to say you don't say that, we're not saying that either. Sometimes maybe you need a combination of the two to help that person through. So depending on the severity, if it's very severe, I say get help. But that was just like a really good example of how, foreseeing Janumikada, they foresee as compared to what their image is. So it's just kind of funny. It's very interesting to see, and people are very surprised when you talk about this subject, especially to non-ethnic Tining, who are basically like Caucasian or other color group.
Or people that don't believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about your altar. And for some of you watching this, I think all of you watching this video, you'll see a picture of her altar behind her as the background. That is her actual altar. Right now it's just this green screen, so it's hard for me to talk about it. But today's shamans, right? I mean, I've seen, I remember my grandfather's altar. It was very generic. It was handmade, and it was like basically a handmade bookshelf with multiple shelves for certain things. But yours is very different, and I think I mentioned in another episode where I'm starting to see how the shamans nowadays, they have more of an elaborate altar. So does it matter how elaborate it is? And can you correlate that the bigger your altar is, then the more powerful you are as a shaman, or what determines how elaborate your altar should be?
Okay, well, I can only speak from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not speaking for anybody else. Some people might consider my altar elaborate, and it is to a certain extent. It is elaborate. Some might classify that as the new wave of shaman to have an elaborate altar, but that's not the case. It just so happened that it is the case with me. My altar looks and is like that is because of kutunesi hulu loni yong yang lindana. So kulu taneng ye yo a similar replica of kutunesi hulu, and hers is supposed to be a similar replica of nutunesi hulu. So it is coming down as a lineage, a pass down of sort. As to how you should set up your altar. Not everybody will have the same altar. Not everybody is afford the same luxury to have the same type of altar, and that's okay. The size of the altar, some people do resonate that maybe having a bigger altar may represent the or that a lot of ability to do this kind of stuff. And it goes back to how they resonate with that piece, that spiritual piece of their altar. Some people say, for example, even though they have a very basic altar, a lot of them are very powerful, like their ability, not powerful as if they have magic like Superman or anything like that, but powerful in the fact that they're very spiritually aware and that they're very in tune with that side. Therefore, they're able to transcend between the two different domains and be able to walk among both sides and do the work, show yang reality, or doyang spiritual dimension. So it doesn't, for me, my understanding is that it doesn't matter the size of your altar, it's the capability of or and how well they're connected with their spiritual side, and how well they're able to communicate that effectiveness and perform their healing ceremonies and rituals. So then that way, loteli be the best benefit to lotu patient or lotu client.
Okay.
So,
well, how does this work as far as starting to, for a lot of folks watching this that are single, they feel this draw towards the shaman path, and when I go see any shaman rituals, the shaman, whether it's man or woman, they have like a spouse there to help them with the process. But for those that are single, that are not married, is there and I might sound ignorant for asking this because I don't know much, can they accept the journey, but then have maybe a sibling or a best friend, to help them get through that process of that ritual?
Yes. Even though you're single, there are cases where journey, they are able to go on their journey, and that they are able to get initiated as a shaman. That's not to say that the journey itself is not complicated. The journey itself is probably very complicated, for the fact that, yes, having a life partner will be a lot easier than not having a life partner to help you through that journey process. I do have relatives who are very young and they're still single, and that they're on their journey, and all of that. However, the responsibility to play the role of that support falls heavily on their family. So, for example, if you're the single, then nu has to be there every single step of the way. So that's a lot of the reason why y'all recommend that wait until you get married before you initiate in that type of journey. Because for the fact that you really need somebody, a life partner there, who are there 24/7, because when go need somebody there to support you, not just emotionally, but sometimes physically, have to be there to make sure you don't fall off or hurt yourself in the process. And especially for coming from a woman's perspective, then it has to be because in the Hmong community you can't have uncle brother spouse because in our community it's seen as a disrespect, play that role for you because of this the role that the men and the women play.
Okay, so that's looked at as disrespectful in our realm,
yes.
The physical realm. Do you think it's also disrespectful in the spiritual realm?
I think that it's not so much that it's disrespectful in on the spiritual realm. It's just that culturally it's not accepted. So nobody, if you go to a regular Hmong ceremony, you will not see uncle for whatever reason. Mù hư là do mù bát đồ tụ bận niệm là do tụ chỉ năng uống nó chỉ cho cứ tí lư tư họ tư tua ba support là the more the merrier. Whoever is there is able to play the part. However, it's very critical if you have to put then it's very critical that it is your spouse or a son or a brother that's there. But join your extended it's a little frowned upon because in the Hmong custom it's looked down upon that the woman should be reserved and should only be with her family or somebody who's close within her family only. So that's how that's how kind of the taboo that the do's and the don'ts.
So for the folks out there who are, because I see this trend in our community where not much my generation, but the younger generation, they're starting to live with their significant other before they actually get married. And for those who are in that situation and also are dealing with the shamanic calling, I would imagine that it's probably tough for them to want to fully embrace it because they're going to be, they want to get Tao or whatever, pursue it, but then they have to rely on their boo, to come in and help them, and then they have to think about how are the relatives going to perceive this, because this person is not my culturally, it's just my boo at this time, and then so it might, I think that might be something to kind of watch out for, to see how that might change their shamanic journey too, because I've run into a lot of folks who've called me and asked me that question is, I feel the shamanic calling, but I'm not married to my boyfriend or my girlfriend yet, and so I'm afraid to pursue it, and I want to, because the longer I wait, the sicker I get to, but then we're not ready to get married. And I don't really have a good answer for that.
And, that question has been, presented to me a couple of times. And I guess part of what I responded in the past is that you don't have to necessarily take that path to get to that same end result. And I know many people will probably disagree with me, but coming from the perspective of Itu Neneng plus coming from the perspective of Itu Poniana, I can relate to the fact that it's hard, especially if you're in a situation where you don't have a spouse. You may have a partner who's very supportive of you, but you still have to contend with the fact that you got to soul support when it comes to that particular piece of your journey. And again, I tell people, reevaluate your circumstance, reevaluate yourself on a spiritual level and on the physical level. Is it realistic for you to be on that path right now? I understand that and that you have no other choice. Yes, then get on that path like ASAP. But if it's something that, it's been on the back of your mind, people's been telling you, maybe step back a little bit and reassess your situation. You do have spiritual guide. We all do have spiritual guide. But at the same time, you have to be realistic. You can't just set your reality here aside and just live in that belief world of spirits. No, because you have to always come back down and put everything back into perspective. Does it make sense for you to continue pursuing that path right now? If you're not sick and you're not yeah, do it. But if you're a little depressed, you keep, you're confused, people tell you this, yourself internally is, falling apart because you have all of these questions and you're searching and you can't find the stuff you're looking for because it's been on your mind for so long. Well, step back a little bit. Sometimes it's not so much the fact that you need to be on that path. Everybody is put on the path that they need to be. They just need to find the balancing act between the two. Because part of, even though you still have to find that balance. It's not like, okay, I don't live with you, they don't know anything, and that only live with your guides. No, it doesn't work like that. You still have to eat, you still have to go to work, you have kids you have to take care of, you have a family you have to look after, you still have really human lives. But for those who are single, I would say, if it's not pressing, seek at your pace, and it's okay to be like that. It's okay, and you don't have to take the path of a shaman to get there. And I know that there will be many people out there who will probably want my head for saying this, but it's the truth, because if shaman was the only spiritual path out there, then Tandon will be on the path of the shaman. But it's not. There's multiple religions out there, and they're all on their own spiritual path. So it's okay for those of you who are single and you're out there and you're struggling, to step back a little bit and say, okay, I understand, accept where you're at, accept that you have these burning questions, and seek answers in areas that, may not have normally come to you. And it's okay to do that without having to be on that path. I would say the shamanic path will probably be the last resort. For me, at least it was. So I say, but then again, that is my own perspective. So,
comparing to the new generation of shamans and the older generation, can you talk a little bit about the signs of I guess just signs saying that you might become a shaman? Because I think the most common sign is, I don't really want to use the word sign too, but people tend to go see a shaman person to get either validation or confirmation to say, yes, you do have Koneng. But what are other signs? Because I think signs, these shamanic signs are like kind of the fundamental, like the foundation, I guess you want to say, for people who have currently accepted that journey. And you talked about being sick and just being physically ill or even mentally ill. What are other signs that might be out there for folks who can relate to and say, you know what, that happens to me, so maybe this might be my path? And then don't be too quick to just go and accept it to say, yeah, I'm supposed to be a shaman, because I really agree with what you just said, which was about shamanism is not the only solution.
Yeah.
So can you share with us what are your experiences and what you think about signs of becoming a shaman?
Okay. Well, let me throw out some misconception out there first. Okay. Some of the misconception in a traditional sense is that you have to be physically ill of some sort.
This is a myth, right?
Well, this is the understanding from the more of the traditional viewpoint of who the Hmong community would classify that maybe they should be on the path of a shaman. It's because they're physically ill. They've been diagnosed and they're, the doctor can't seem to find anything wrong with them. So therefore, coming back and doing that cultural ritual is able to alleviate that illness. So therefore, that person has to be on the path of the shaman. So in the past, that's been used to diagnose who's actually on the path of mua koneng koyai, and that they should start oneng oyai. Well, now with the new wave is that it's not so much that you have to be physically ill and you're in the hospital dying to be able to be labeled as mua koneng koyai. Some people are just like having mental problems. And Yatsineng already diagnosed these individuals as mua koneng koyai. So that's why there's a lot of like new age thinking that, it doesn't have to be that you're physically ill to be that mua koneng koyai and that you should be starting your journey. More mental problem, like, I hear voices or I see things. And other people, it's like, maybe because you're having those kind of issue, maybe you have it. So that kind of plants a seed in that person's mind saying, maybe I have this, but it could just very well be that, maybe that person doesn't. But because we all have these abnormal experiences and having somebody validate that maybe it's this, they're validating and holding on to that. Okay. So if I could, say that I don't have to think anymore about it, and that now I can continue to seek what it is that I need to do to alleviate that part. But the thing is that sometimes we have to step back, because when it comes to that, it's a little of a slippery slope, because it's kind of like something where once you hit to a certain point, there's no turning back. So for the path of a shaman, I would say, there are classic signs. I do believe that in the traditional sense that if they're very ill, they're chronically ill, and that nothing seems to work, medicine doesn't seem to work, anything doesn't seem to work, and they come back and then yes, that person definitely would need to start their spiritual journey on the shamanic path. However, for the younger, more single individual, and somebody out of the blue said, I get a sense that you have koneng. Don't always take it word for word. Sometimes they sense your angel, or they sense your energy guide, and that you're very compatible, you're very spiritual. Your spiritual energy is giving off a very strong, aura to that other person that they're automatically very compatible. Like, they can sense it really strong. Just because they could do that does not mean that that person may be necessarily need to be on the path of a shaman, because then that presents many, many obstacles for tutining that were it could be alleviated had that not been said to them, or had that not been pressed upon them that way. And so my message would be for Jatining who are single, accept that when people tell you, okay, take it with a grain of salt, and validate that. Yeah, maybe if they're sensing that from me, we're all spiritual beings. I may have some, angels around me that's helping me out, because we all do. Because there are things that happens and you can't explain, and it's okay. But then if you're not, physically ill, you're not like, you're not trying to be above and beyond, and that you're normal, or again, what is normal, right? But you are just, like everybody else. Take a step back and reevaluate, balance that out and say, why would this person say, it's okay to be a little skeptic, because then you really get down to the nuts and bolts. And if you are supposed to be on this path, then, and if there is no other way out, then get on this path. But until then, I would say, there are many, many ways to get to same place. You don't have to take this path to get there.
What about dreams? Are there certain type of dreams that people usually have that is like a sign that says you're supposed to be a shaman? Because I know my dad, he talks about dreams, and sometimes I wonder if he can interpret dreams. But he talked, I think one time he shared with me about if you dream about riding a certain color horse, then that might be an indication that you might be a shaman, or it might be death. It might be. It was a lot of crazy things, and I've never had a dream like that, so I'm pretty thankful.
Because, I could validate and agree with your dad to a certain degree, because there are certain animals, certain things that we do symbolize as certain things that it represents. But again, take it with a grain of salt. I would say, what does that message mean to you? Nobody can interpret your dream, and because what it means to you may mean differently to somebody else, right, if that same dream happens to them. So I would say, decode your own dream. I decode my dream. And what I take out of that dream may be different from what some people might take out of that dream. Okay. So say, for example, some people dream of, the classic chokwa, right? And some people would say, oh my gosh, that's so bad because it's a human act, But then some older folks may say, oh, you go right? But it's something that Yolo has considered in the past, but then again, does it really apply to you? And it's how you interpret and how you take that dreams. So say, for example, if I had a dream like that and I didn't know any different, it's not going to affect me. I just had a bizarre dream that I went number 2. So what? If I don't put any credit in it, it's not going to affect me. I'm not going to notice that kupongia or kutonia or anything like that because my mind's not on it. It's what your dream is giving you. And it's just like decoding your life experience and the circumstance that you're going through right now. It's just like a message that your brain is just trying to help you to overcome that particular item in your life right now. So
I don't think the shit dreams are real. Because I've dreamt about taking a shit and other people taking the shit and getting on me. And
you don't get money or you don't lose money, right?
My income situation never improved. So I think if I have those
See, you
dreams, I'm
proved
just
my
gonna,
point right there.
yeah, I'm gonna stay away from poop when I dream about those. Okay, now let's talk about the taboos a little bit.
Sure.
I think some of these folks who are watching this video, the ones that are again going on the leaning towards the shaman journey, are the taboos from the older folks, like, do they carry over to the newer generation? So we talked off camera a little bit about certain types of food, or even going to the funeral home. Is that still impacting the newer folks?
For the food taboos, I would have to say that there good guy, certain things might eat probably better if you're on the shamanic path. If you're not, don't worry about it. The reason why there are certain food taboos if you're on the shamanic path is because they go more and what does that mean? Is that they go not so that's why joy what's in funeral home they don't usually consume those food because in their mind it represents that those food are for the past. When the people who are living who are there during that time the veil is very thin, so there's also spiritual beings that are there, and there are physical beings that are there who are partaking in that ceremony. So you're in support of the living, so that's a ceremony towards and different people have different validation explanation as to why they don't eat those food. But for the majority of they don't usually eat funeral food or food that are being served at the funeral home, even though they're prepackaged and there's nothing, but they just prefer not to because they from a personal experience they probably have gotten ill after eating foods like that, so they've just chosen not to, and it's okay.
Do you eat food over there at the funeral home?
Do I? No. I try not to.
I try not to too, but on the kopia nights, I cannot resist. So
hey, it's okay.
I'll double up on that that meal. I think they usually do Saturday nights. I know that very well for some reason. All right, so yeah, some people they even like when we talk about funerals, I noticed that one of my uncles, when my grandmother died, it was his mom actually, and he they put the body out on the floor, and he went up to his mom and he touched his mom's body, and he started having a seizure. So then another shaman, and now this was an aunt of mine, she came and she started saying she started chanting something, and she started blowing on his forehead, and to me it was fascinating. I wasn't, but then part of me, because I know how my uncle is, I was like, dude, man, you just bullshit, man, get up, why you trying to play people like that, trying to get attention. But then he was like really shaking. I was like, okay, maybe he's for real. So she kept blowing on his forehead, and then they took him to a back room, and he finally came to. He was like, what happened? And then I heard my aunt say this very clearly: you should know better. You're a shaman. You're not supposed to be touching dead people, even if it's your own family members. That's why this happened. So then I was like, oh my gosh, this is some powerful stuff, But is it still true for let's say you, or is it more of a personal fear? Like I'm not good with dead people in general.
Well, I can tell you my own personal experience. About a year and I would say 9 or 10 months ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly. He passed away from a heart attack, multiple heart attacks actually. So they weren't able to bring him back, so he passed away. During that time, I was already a shaman. So it was my father, and I know that my master was there. She refused to eat the food that was there. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't, she wouldn't go close. She'll mourn my father, but at a distance. She wouldn't touch him. She wouldn't do anything because and I totally respect that. Me, as a Sineng, I touch my father. I didn't come down with anesthesia.
Oh, so that might just be more...
Yeah. I cried, I mourned for him. I didn't eat the food, okay? Because 3 days, if you're not going to eat, who's going to feed you, right? So I even ate the funeral food. I was okay. I didn't get sick. But one thing I do have to say is that different people respond differently.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too.
I would not go out to just a random person's funeral and start eating the food. The only reason why I ate the food at my dad's funeral was because it was my dad's funeral. For me, it was like his last meal with me. And I know that my aunt was saying, my master was saying, and I can understand to a certain degree that maybe it did for me doing that. But it was me living as a physical person, respecting, paying my last respect to my father, who happens to be a shaman too. And I'm sure that had I been in his position, I'm his daughter, he's my father. It was his last time on earth, and aside from all those taboo, I figure that's okay. That's my it's okay because it was me, and it was the love I had with my father.
I think you nailed it on the head there when you talked about it differs for everybody because, you just talked about who cares if you weren't supposed to touch your father, if you were supposed to go with him, if you touch him, then you would go. Because I think at that point, emotionally, you're an emotional wreck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't really care what happens. But, I mean, it just didn't happen to my uncle. I've heard other shamans say this, too, where do not go and touch the deceased body. But I agree with you. I think it differs, from one shaman to another.
And I do have to throw this out there too. For those who are very traditional, stuff to protect even though your family lana elo wanang yellow more not jello tiny the each yellow to lolo todania da de tama loma locato lo jaconan koya each yellow go talo lomofion the talo ya itu nang chang jay holo jenang na lo lo taway tanang cha lo jaconan takalo. Okay, so there are many things that people have done. Me personally, I had to I didn't use anything to tie gulutaning, not because of anything. My dad died unexpectedly. Who's gonna have time to worry about putting a plastic paper on to cover my altar? I didn't care about that at that point in time for my life, because it was a life and death situation for me with my father.
Yep.
And so I think if you think that your koning is more important, and if you have that mentality, then go ahead and do it, because then if you're going you're gonna blame it that. So I say, do what your conscience tells you. If your conscience is telling you I have to do this, otherwise I'm not gonna get I'm gonna get all these bad omens and stuff like that. Do it so you have a peace of mind. For me, the reason why I didn't do that was because I had my peace of mind, saying that my guides, my path is secure in the fact that I'm still gonna grow as a spiritual being. I'm still gonna be able to go on my journey. I'm still going to be able to heal people just fine. and I'm just being human and being compassionate and being able to love my parents the way they should be loved because they gave birth to me. That's the least I can do for them. You know, it was like their last time with me.
Yeah.
So
Hey, could you believe we're almost up to our hour already?
really?
That's crazy. Yeah. There's one topic I want to talk about before we end for today, and I'm sure I'll have you come back to do some more.
Okay. Sure.
I wanted to talk about as far as like spiritual experiences right now, currently,
Okay.
because I think there's also a misconception for folks who want to open up spiritually, whether it's the shaman route or not. They think it's going to be cool because they get to see spirits and help people. And it's not always like that.
It's not all fun and games.
Yeah, it's not always like that, because I truly believe this, and it's happened to me, and it's happened to a lot of people that I've helped, open up, and also people who I've helped, but they've shared this with me, is when you accept this spiritual path and you embrace it, you get tested by the demons, and the test can come directly from demon spirits, or they can try to influence close people to you to test you. And that's the ugly side of this whole thing, I think. Since you have embraced your journey, can you share some of the ugly things that you've seen spiritually? It could be ugly or scary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're asking if I see things, yes, I've had some experience while on my journey of encountering entities that I wasn't expecting. And was I scared? Yes, I was. But I came back down and I rationalized. And when I started rationalizing it, and I accepted it for what it is, I didn't make it out to be something else that I wasn't. I was scared, but I accepted my fear, and then I moved past that. Once you accepted that, they can't do anything about it. And that's part of the power of understanding that when you're on your spiritual journey, when you start fearing, you feed your fear with fear, and that the more you fear something, you're feeding that fear. So when I encounter certain things, initially I was scared and I was fearful, but then I recognized that I was being fearful and I was feeding them what they wanted out of me. So I kind of stepped back. I was able to step back and acknowledge that, okay, there was something that unexplained happened and it made me scared. But so what? They are not physical. They can't do anything to harm me. Or if I had to choose between Chai Da and Chai Ning and Chai Ning and Chai Dana, because Da, they're only there as essence, and they could only scare you as being unexplained. Chai Ning, whereas they're actually there physically, they can actually harm you and do some really bad stuff to you. So I look at worst case scenario. Well, yeah, go your da. Okay, I respect that. Go your da, go your ning. Go peacefully. I pray that you go on your blessed way and I go on my blessed way, and that it's okay, it's compatible. And then they can't do anything when you accept it like that. But the more you fear it, you're feeding them. You're giving them the power over you. So it seems like the more you fear them, the stronger they seem to get. And so I try to be very mindful of that. So when I do experience unexplained items, I try to step back and be objective about it and not give them the upper hand over me. So some of the experience that I've had personally was a few months back. My husband wasn't home at that time, and I had an experience where I was in the kitchen. I was in the middle of cooking dinner, and out of the corner of my eye, like right above, like we had the door right next to it. So I saw the crown, like the top head of a little girl. She had black hair, long. Yes, for those of you like The Grudge. Okay.
Hey, what's up with that? You know, there's always that long hair with the
long hair. Yeah.
White dress.
I didn't see the dress part, but I knew the hair was black and it was long.
Uh-huh.
So I saw it on the corner of my eye, and it walked right like through the kitchen door. And then I saw the top of it. I didn't see the face. I saw the top of it, and then the second it saw me, and it noticed that I saw it, it ducked. So it ducked out of way, and I dropped, like I was holding iponje, and I dropped my salt over the counter. And then I was like, it started dawning in on me, like, holy, what was that? So I was like, I froze for like maybe a good 10 to 15 seconds. And I kept going in the back of my mind. And all of a sudden, like right when I came down from my being frozen from seeing that unexpected entity, I just got like cold all over from head to toe, like, and goosebumps was everywhere. So I kind of knew that it wasn't, because it wasn't an entity of, physical person, that Nuyatu entity of something I can't explain, that I instantly became very fearful for myself and for whatever that was there. But when I came to, like, I finally rationalized and I said, wait a minute, this is my house. I'm the person in charge here. So I actually went to the door of where that thing was, and I said out loud, if you're here for good, if you're a good spirit, but if you're here to harm me, my family, then know this, that you're not welcome here. The power, the energy of Lundu Dai'a do not allow you the right to do that to me and my family. So when I said that, and I had to actually walk through to my altar, and I pray to my altar, and I pray to my guides and say, we just had this experience, this is what happened. Please provide your guidance, and please provide your protection for those who are under this roof, who are of good, and for those who are evil, please guide them out. So I had to go around and draw around my whole house with my swords to kind of mark all my windows and my doors to make sure that for those who are only allowed to come in was Jojong, and that the one that are Chijong, they need to go out, because it's either that time or for them not to Duxia later on. And so I did a ritual, like a quick ritual like that for protection and whatnot. And I came back and I felt like so relaxed and so calm. I mean, that was a terrifying experience, but yet I became so calm. And later on that night, I saw it again. But this time it wasn't trying to scare me. It was just trying to play with me. It was just playing peekaboo. So I knew it was just, it was like down the hall, and like you could sense it. It was peeking. So it kept peeking, and I said, I recognize that you are there, and I recognize that okay, you need to leave before so I don't want to harm you. Please go. And so I got the sense that it wasn't a bad energy. It wasn't what I thought it was. And after that evening, like the day after I came to find out that I had a really close friend who I've known for, I would say, about over 8-9 years, who had cancer and had passed away that same day. And I came to realize, because she didn't nếu chị tu nên cho cái trái đắc hoa này lời cho cái trái chia, they go to church and stuff like that. So when I said nicely that, you know, if it was a good entity, that it could, you know, it could stay peacefully there with me if that's what it was. And it was a peaceful entity. And I think later on I kind of got the sense that it was kind of like her telling me goodbye. Because since then I haven't seen it. I haven't, you know, and it was just trying to say, okay, you know, I have to go. So since then, I haven't had any like bizarre experience or anything like that. But that was just like one of my most recent like encounter with like energy, that they didn't. Sometimes they're there without you realizing that they're there, and then just so happens that you have you know. So that's one thing to consider, is that they're not always bad, but that's not to say that you shouldn't, you know, don't taunt them either, because, you know, they could do things that Ohio you may not want them to do. So
well, it's an hour, and you know, I want to see if you can come back next time and talk about spells and things like that, because you can do a little bit of that, right?
A little.
Okay. I'm glad I don't know how to do that, because I'd be a dangerous person. There's a reason why I don't know how to cast spells, because I think sometimes I have a short fuse, or you know, just in the heat of the moment, if I knew how to really hurt somebody, I might just, it's like, you know, the whole thing of carry and conceal. There's been many times in my life if I did have a gun, somebody would have probably gotten hurt, you know. So I'm okay with that piece, but I've always been fascinated at people who can do that, and so if you can come back next time and share a little bit of that, I think a lot of folks would enjoy it.
Okay, and I want to also interject that the casting spell piece, though, I don't learn. I haven't learned them from anybody, so. That's, meaning
it was given to you by
my guides.
See, that's even more awesome. So, and when I talked about the bad portion of for me knowing how to cast spells, I mean, I didn't imply that you know bad spells and you can.
No, I got that.
So don't contact Bob for those services.
I don't know how to do those. No.
She does the good ones, right? Yeah, you do the good ones. See, for me, I go for the bad ones. You know, I'd be like, let's see how I can get some money out of this dude or something, you know. But, okay, so maybe next time you come back and we can talk a little bit more about the whole casting spells in a positive manner. Okay. All right, any last messages about, you know, your experiences and how you want other people to kind of, like, what message you want them to take away from this episode? I'll let you take the last words and then we'll end it.
Okay. My last, I guess the only thing that I have to say is that if for those who are single and you're on your journey and you're thinking of you're supposed to be where you're supposed to go, just look inside yourself. You know where you have to go. You know what it is you have to do. Don't always accept what other people tell you. Take it with a grain of salt. And that's part of you discovering who you truly are, is when you become truthful to yourself. Okay?
All right, cool. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.